Will Watchtower win over Norway? That's the big question. And we have to be very patient because it'll take the judge 2 weeks to decide who wins. I've just arrived home in my hometown of Copenhagen from Oslo. And I have a lot of thoughts about what happened, what I saw there. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And also give my 5 cents about what do I think is going to happen. Welcome to Udstødt.
Det lige rundt om hjørnet.
Well, what a trip. What beautiful 6 days I spent it in total in Norway. Let me tell you a little bit about how beautiful the ex-Jehovah's Witness community is. Not only in United States and in Australia, but also in Scandinavia. I met so many nice people there that I can't believe it now. I have to absorb all my impressions there. From day one, I arrived Monday evening, and then I met some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in the morning, Tuesday already. And Tuesday was a day off for the trial, so I had enough time to meet up with the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And they were so incredible nice. You already met Patrick Heck and his wonderful wife, Belinda. I spent some time with them. We went out to dinner and also met Adis from Iceland, who also attended. I met up with Krista. I met up with a woman with a name I cannot say here because she wants to be anonymous, but she knows who I'm talking about. I met up with Elin and her brother. So many nice people. And I was very touched because several times they told how much this podcast means to them. Not only in Denmark. I mean, for you guys who don't understand what's the situation with the languages, in Scandinavia, we do understand each other if we speak very slowly. And they are very much in family, Danish, Swedish, Norwegian. Especially when you read Danish and Norwegian, it's almost similar. I understand 100% everything I read in Norwegian. It's not quite the same in Swedish, but I'll manage. And apparently there are a lot of listeners in Norway too. I didn't know that there were so many. And they told me they came with gift chocolates, and Adis from Iceland, she bought me this Hjejle. It's a little bird. I think it is called in English a golden plover or something like that. And it's a bird who comes in the springtime to Iceland. And Adis told me that every time this little bird arrives in spring, all the newspapers, all TV, they write about it. Oh, the Hjejle has arrived. And it arrives with knowledge and hope for the future. So it was a very, very nice gift. Thank you very much, Adis. And I also got chocolate, and people are very nice. And several told me that they are listening to this podcast in Norway too, and they get so much comfort. And they say, Frank, you don't know how much influence you have and how much your podcast helps. And of course, I'm very touched by it. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for all your nice words. But still, I want to say that I am not the hero here. All the people I've had in my podcast telling their stories, mostly Danish people, but also from Sweden and also from Norway, they are the heroes. They are the ones who dares to step forward and tell their story, even though it's sometimes horrible stories they're telling. So my thank or gratitude goes to all my nice guests, and they will keep coming because they can see what is going on in the Watchtower right now, and more people dares to step forward. And speaking of dares to speak forward, I cannot understand the tremendous pressure that the Norwegian ex-Jehovah's Witnesses has been under doing what they have done with this trial. And I'm talking about the ex-Jehovah's witnesses, witnesses, who step forward in the court. I mean, this is not like speaking with me in a podcast and sitting in front of a camera. These are people stepping into a court, and behind them are 40, 50 of their former friends. They know a lot of them there. And just to know that they're sitting there behind them when they're sitting in the court in the chair explaining for the judge and for the prosecutor and the defense, it's an enormous pressure it must have been. So all my respect goes out to them. And that's also one of my thoughts. I contacted some of the witnesses who were there, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and asked them if they wanted to talk with me, making an interview. And some of them said, Frank, we would like to do it, but just not now. I'm fed up with Jehovah's Witnesses. It's such a precious. I need a break from all this. And the same thing actually happened also with Jan Frode Nielsen, the big hero. He's the guy behind all this. And we had an arrangement. We agreed about meeting Friday afternoon. And he was so stressed about all this. And I do understand it. He was very stressed. And finally I wrote, no, of course, you go home to your family, go home to your beautiful girlfriend, to your beautiful children, and have a normal life now. Don't think so much about Jehovah's Witnesses. He has been on and on and on, giving so many interviews in the Norwegian newspapers. And you have to think about, these are human beings. They don't have a big organization behind them. They don't have a lot of money. They have normal jobs, normal family life. And suddenly they are thrown into all this avalanche of your whole life being torn out, and you have to explain everything one more time, and all these bad memories coming up. And what Jan Frode Nielsen, or as we should pronounce it, Jan Frode Nielsen, in Danish at least, what he have done is beyond imagination. So it is very important, and I also say that in my podcast, sometimes you're fed up with Jehovah's Witnesses, leave it. Concentrate on something else. I felt it on my own life too. I've been doing this podcast in Danish for about 5 years almost. 2 months from now, it's 5 years. And sometimes I take a break. I cannot make videos every second day or every week. It's every second week. I had a break during the December month because I need breaks. I need not to think so much about Jehovah's Witnesses. I won't let it allow to fill up my life again. I will do it because I want to, because I have time, and I think it's still interesting. It's more or less the same thing as when you're going to the airplane and you have this video in the beginning of safety guards, and they tell you, if the oxygen mask comes down, you have a child beside you, very important, take on the mask yourself before you give it to your child. Because how can you help other people who are in danger if you cannot help yourself? So Jan and Naomi and Teresa and all you guys who have been fighting for all this, who dared to stand forward, remember to take care of yourself, because otherwise you might walk directly into a depression. Well, back to the courthouse. I spent the whole day from 9 o'clock till almost 4 o'clock, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I didn't have the possibility to come before and see the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Actually, I booked my flight and my hotel, and I asked my boss to take some day off because I wanted to see the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, but the court changed the dates, so I could not do anything about it. But there were a lot of other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses supporting the ones when they were in the witness stand. But I were there for the last 3 days, and hearing the summarizing from the prosecutor and also from the defense. They had almost a day and a half each to tell about their opinions. And it was also Wednesday, or was it Thursday, that this guy from Watchtower, Ben Elder, that you've probably heard about. Ben Elder, that's a funny name for an elder in Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe he changed his last name from Ben, ministerial servant, to Ben Elder. I don't know. Probably not. But that's a funny thing. And that was very interesting because I understood 100% what he was saying because it was in English. And you heard it from Fixing My Faith, from some of Jan Frode Nielsen's, some of his updates also on Twitter or X, what he said. And I was sitting there only 20 feet from him. And he was just reading up and he was so polished and so nice and telling all this about how Jehovah's Witnesses has been prosecuted during Nazi Germany and also in Russia, and they are victims and all that. And I thought, well, who are the real victims here? You're talking about 1,500 people in the concentration camp, and some few hundreds died, and that's terrible. It's not because I want to talk that down, but we also know the background story about Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany from the 30s and forward. We know about Rutherford and how he pushed the witnesses to stand forward for their faith, and while he was enjoying his life in Beth Sarim in California. It's a terrible story. You have to look that up. What started the prosecution of Jehovah's Witnesses? The Watchtower is actually the bad guy here. But that's another story. But of course, he mentions that we are the victims. But think about the millions of victims from the Watchtower being shunned from their family, having heavily depressions, and also committed suicides. You have plenty of examples of that. Think about the victims from the blood transfusion doctrine. No, he's only thinking about how he can defend himself. Of course, he will do that. Yeah, it's not. I'm not surprised about how they're twisting the words. Also, their lawyer, Anders Rysdahl, and all people will do that in a court. It's not only the Watchtower. Even the mafiosos standing in front of a judge. Oh, I didn't do that. But I listened to that. I listened to their arguments of how Jehovah's Witnesses has been prosecuted, and he mentioned a lot of examples. We haven't done anything wrong. We're just happy Christians who worship our God. And then after Thursday afternoon, then it were the defense, the lawyers from the Norwegian state. And both parties, both the prosecutors and also the defense, they summarized a lot of other trials against Jehovah's Witnesses. Some they won and some they lost and so on. And it was a long list. Actually, I have to say something. I have to be fair, you know. I understood as a Dane 100% what the prosecutor, Anders Rysdahl, said. Because he was talking very slowly. I understood it. He was very calm and very serious. And then you had these two younger women in their late 20s defending the state, and they were very fast and they were running hastily through all the trials around the world. And I thought, this is very fast for me. But they did a good job. It's not to talk it down. So now, after all this in the afternoon, Friday, the judge said, okay, now we went through it all. Thank you for both parties. I will now use 2 weeks to go through all the documents, all your evidences, and then I will come with not a solution, but my verdict. And there was one thing that annoyed me a little bit. Because the judge, he was very mild, very polite. One of his last words were addressed to this Ben Elder from the German branch, freedom of worship, defending religious freedom all over Europe and so on. And the judge said, "I wish you a very pleasant travel back home." Why did he say that? Not because I thought he would take part for him, but it was very nice of you coming all this way to say what you said. Yeah, okay. It's because I'm colored from my background. I thought that was unnecessary. So now we have 2 weeks where we have to be patient to wait for the verdict. And the big question is, will Watchtower win over the Norwegian state? And I'm sorry I have to break the bad news, but I'm not 100% sure. It's not like I'm saying after what I heard, the summarizing from both parties, it's not like I said, yeah, we got it, we are 100% going to win. You never know. You never know. Because the core of the whole case is all about, are Jehovah's Witnesses shunning children? Are they baptizing them as small children? Are they experiencing very hard pressure from the parents to get baptized and so on? That is what their main focus is on. And as Anders Rysdal, the prosecutor, said, we haven't seen any examples on that. Okay? He was more or less right in this case. We don't have the smoking gun. Okay? We don't have a lot of children or youngsters coming in defending and say, we have experienced that ourselves. I was only 10 years old when I was baptized. I was pressured into this. No, on the contrary, the witnesses said, no, I was 15. I think there was one saying 14 years old, but no, they were 16, 17, 18 years old. And I had an okay childhood. It was not that bad and so on. So that's what he's pointing at. He is ignoring all the pressure. Of course, he is the prosecutor. But fortunately, the defense mentioned that if you grow up as a Jehovah's Witness from your child, from your baby, you will learn about Jehovah and his earthly organization. You learn that this is the only true religion. Don't hear about criticism. Don't study other religions. Just believe in Jehovah. How do you have any choice even though you are 16, 17, 18 years old? You have been indoctrinated all your life. Do you actually have a choice? So I would like that defense, they mentioned it, but they should have used a lot of more videos from Watchtower, showing the Caleb and Sophia videos, showing how they tell children that if you don't sit very politely and listening to the meetings, it's like in the Noah's day.
You are right. He paid attention, and it saved his life. Paying attention at the meetings can help save your life.
At Genesis 6:22, we read, "And Noah did according to all that God had commanded him. He did just so."
You know that video probably. If you don't go out from door to door, you will almost die. You have to preach for your classmates. You're not allowed to play with a warlock or what's it called, this little cartoon figure. You are under such negative social control. And there is an avalanche of examples from the Watchtower showing how you should raise your child and indoctrinate them, and what that might end up in. But the prosecutor, he was like, yeah, but nobody's forced into this. I mean, when you're getting baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, it's very, very hard. It's not easy to be a Jehovah's Witness. You have a lot of questions. I think it's around 100 questions. You use at least a year before that the elders decide, yes, you can be baptized. And that's in a way true. But they're not thinking about that when you are asked this question, you are so indoctrinated, you just want to be baptized. So I needed that more or less smoking gun. I needed that more pressure, showing more from Watchtower Society, what they have written and all the horrible videos. Instead, they were summarizing so many cases from all over the world, from Bulgaria, from Russia, from United States, from Poland, and so on. And maybe I'm not a lawman. I'm not much into the Norwegian law, but I think it's more or less the same as in the rest of Scandinavia, the system there. So maybe it's very important to show what other countries have decided too when the cases have been around Jehovah's Witnesses. And then one last thought, and don't kill the messenger. But when the prosecutor says that it's up to Jehovah's Witnesses, some shun their children, some don't. We know it's a lie. We know they're twisting their words because you're not told that in the Kingdom Hall. Well, it's up to you if you want to follow it, not. We know what is true for Jehovah's Witnesses and what is not true. But there is a little bit of truth when we talk about shunning your family members and we talk about Scandinavia. And I will tell you a little bit about the Scandinavian model, or the Danish model at least, as I call it. Once there were an American Jehovah's Witness in Denmark, and he went to meetings, and he went to some parties from the youngsters there they were having. And he said afterwards, "You are not really Jehovah's Witnesses here in Denmark. You know that?" I said, "What? What are you talking about?" "Well, you are acting almost like worldly people." He was exaggerating. And by that, he was thinking as an American Jehovah's Witnesses. And you have to know this, that Jehovah's Witnesses started in New York. It is an American sect. It started there. Most of the 8.8 million, according to their own figures, Jehovah's Witnesses, most of them live in United States. It's an American religion. So when they are coming to Denmark, Sweden, Norway around 1900, it is another culture, a totally different, even though it's a Western country, it's different mentality. And of course, if you go to Bolivia, you go to Japan, if you go to Finland, it's a culture in the culture. And the Scandinavians have, for decades, maybe hundreds of years, been a very free people. Free-spirited, free in their mind. They were the first ones to let the porn go free. That was in Denmark. Not that I'm especially proud of that. But in Scandinavia, especially Denmark, let me say 100% for Denmark, the Danes don't talk, they don't care about religion in general. They never talk about it. It's like a taboo. Nobody writes on internet, "Oh, I read in the Bible, I believe this and that." Nobody's proclaiming on my work or wherever I go that I belong to this Christian denomination or I believe in God. Nobody talks about it. It's just a thing you never discuss. It's for yourself. And that influences also Jehovah's Witnesses. Me, myself, I had a job for many years. Nobody knew I was a Jehovah's Witness. I know the Watchtower encouraged to tell everybody, but it's not black and white, this one. We cannot say this is 100% what a Jehovah's Witness will do in this or that situation, especially not in Denmark. Not to say, I'm not saying that they're not influenced so much, because they are, of course, but they are in many ways acting a little bit... letting loose of some rules. I can give you an example. In 2019, there were an international convention in Brøndby, outside Copenhagen. And you know what they had for their party afterwards? Beer. It was not light beer, it was real beer that all the brothers from all over the world could get and have a glass of beer. And they were always also... very surprised. Wow, you can have beer at the convention. It was only at the international convention, and they also had a big party inside a big. I think it was a sports stadium in Farum, and they were acting. They have an acting of Hans Christian Andersen, and it was more or less like, a little bit off limit, off the normal way to have conventions. And even a lot of Danish Jehovah's Witnesses were surprised. Wow, this is not how we normally do our conventions. And there was another incident also, it was very funny, that when the days were ending, the Danish Jehovah's Witnesses started to make waves, way like a big sports football stadium, and standing up, making the wave, and everybody was happy, and everybody was clapping, and so on. But then Stephen Lett from the governing body, he was not satisfied with that. So later on, I think it was on the third day, on Sunday, he prayed to Jehovah and he said, please also let the brothers here not doing, he didn't say worldly things, but something like that. It was not good to make the wave, you know. And this way of being a Jehovah's Witnesses is very, very different from the Jehovah's Witnesses in, let's say, United States. They're getting more freedom. And now you're all shocked about the beard thing. But in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, even elders have had beard for many years. I remember when I was Jehovah's Witnesses, and we are going back 25, 27, 8 years ago, there was an elder in my congregation who has a full beard. And I remember I traveled to United States with my then wife and showed pictures from the congregation, and all the brothers there in Minnesota, North Dakota, New York, they saw this, and all of them were saying, oh, he must be a Bible study. No, he's an elder. And they were shocked. He's an elder, and they were showing to the others, look, he has beard. And one of the brothers said, that's horrible. Why are you allowed to do that? And at that time, I didn't think so much about it. Most of the brothers in Denmark are shaved until now, of course. But there were some elders too who had a beard. So they are a little rebel about this. Okay, why I'm telling you this? Because if they're so free-minded, not all the rules from Watchtower are being followed. So in a sense, he was a little right. In a sense. Sorry to say. I'm not black and white here. I'm not super optimistic. I'm not super pissed. I'm realistic. So there are examples of Jehovah's Witnesses in Denmark. I also talked with a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, even though they're disfellowshipped, even though that their parents see them in the nighttime when they cannot be seen by the close the curtains and invite inside. And of course, there are a lot of taboo, there are a lot of things they don't talk about, but they do see them. Hush, hush. Don't tell anything. They don't go bragging in the kingdom hall saying, oh, I saw my disfellowship son yesterday. Of course they don't do that. But there are some who's doing it. And there are also people who want to be in my podcast, and they said, I have a lot of good stories, Frank. I would love to tell my story, but I still have some relatives. I have an old father who's still alive. And if I go forward telling my story, then he will cut the contact and so on. So I just want to be fair here when I'm saying this, and maybe you have experienced that too. But most of the Jehovah's Witnesses in Denmark, I'm sure they will follow the rules, but they kind of trying to go under the line and not being too fanatic, to use that word. There are fanatic Jehovah's Witnesses in Denmark, but I don't think there are a lot of fanatics. So that's just what I want to say about this. If the judge focus only on are children being shunned under the age of under 18, are there a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses being baptized under 15? I'm not sure you can find so many. Not the last 20, 30 years. Because, and I heard that from several of my guests, their parents said, you're not ready to be baptized. Wait till you are 17 or 18 or even though. They say that directly, even though they know what the Watchtower says. So there are some who are following their own rules. And then there are all these people who are living under the radar, are in secret seeing their parents. And of course, you cannot get these people inside the courtroom and telling their stories because that will destroy their family relations. I understand that. That's the same thing with my podcast. So that's my 5 cents. But I really hope that the judge the next 2 weeks will look all through it. We'll see the testimonies from the prosecutor and the testimonies from Ben Elder to see through his lies and investigate what is the real situation also in Norway. And I want to say, because there are people living under the rule trying to figure out how to swim through this ocean of Watchtower articles and finding out how I can live the best life ever, not following all the rules. It does not mean that I have not been influenced by it. That's certainly not what I'm saying. Because we have all been influenced by it. Also me. And the prosecutor mentioned at one time, he said, did you also notice when he was going through all the witnesses in Thursday, he said, notice that a lot of the witnesses, when we ask about their childhood, they said, no, it was actually a good one. So what's the problem here? And I was sitting there thinking, well, I said that too many years after I left Jehovah's Witnesses. When people ask something about my childhood and, oh, you did not go to birthdays and you did not celebrate Christmas, wasn't it hard for you? I said at that time, for many years, no, it was not so bad. We had other present parties. We didn't call it Christmas, but we had some days after Christmas. Oh, I suddenly got a present. And we just called it something else. Like also some Jehovah's Witnesses allow their kids to go to birthday parties. Just don't call it birthday parties. Call it present party. It's just another way to go around these rules. But it's still damaging. It's still damaging for children. And to listen about Armageddon coming soon, you're the only one going to survive. In some way, I think it's more damaging that if you have fanatic parents that say, no, 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 no. The other thing of living in two worlds, that's even more damaging in my opinion. I know now that my childhood was not the best. It's still indoctrination that was sitting in my head when people ask about my childhood. When I said, oh, it was actually good. Today, I know 100% it was not a good childhood. I didn't have any confidence in myself. When I left Jehovah's Witnesses, it took me a lot of years to figure out what's right, what's wrong. And when people told me something, I believed them. Okay, yeah, that's the truth. Or you're saying something different, opposite. Okay, that's also sounds good. I couldn't get my own opinion. So it is damaging to be a Jehovah's Witnesses coming out, being disfellowshipped, or just leaving. Okay, I'm blabbering here. That's my 5 cents. Thank you for listening. If you want to follow me, just hit the subscribe button. And in the future, I will make more English videos, but I will still continue making Danish podcasts, also from my friends in Norway and Sweden. And I have made an arrangement with the dear Jan Frode Nielsen that I can talk to him through Zoom, and that will be in English, and you can look forward to that. Thank you for watching.